Nik Bonitto gets paid by the Broncos. A massive extension breaking this morning where Nik Bonitto lands a 4-year, $106 million extension up to $120 million with $7 million guaranteed. In the words of George Payton, Nik Bonitto, holy F. And we have a new meaning now, Henry, for LFB. Let's frickin' Bonitto, baby. Broncos with another massive extension.
Yeah, no, it's exciting to see. Getting Nik Bonitto to stick around is definitely a good thing. You know, there are the people out there who say he doesn't defend the run, and so what's he really worth? And the answer is, first of all, he's still developing as a player. He wasn't even a starter at this time a year ago. So the idea that he could get better in any way should not be a surprise. But on top of that, he does the thing that's hard to find, and that's get to the quarterback. And not just get to the quarterback, but get to the quarterback fast. He's one of the guys who gets around the edge quickly, can get sacks on quarterbacks who typically do get the ball out in less than 3 seconds, you know? And you just don't have a lot of players in the NFL who can get to the quarterback as quickly as he can, as often as he can. And keeping him in Denver is a very good thing.
It's a very good thing. And Henry, this is just another win-win contract that the Broncos give out. I felt this way about Zach Allen's deal. I felt this way about Courtland Sutton's deal. And this is what happens when you take care of guys early on. And this is a win for Nik Bonitto. $70 million guaranteed. $70 million guaranteed. Look, he already had incredible money for his life. He was set to make $5 million this year. Now this is life-changing money, not just for him, but for, you know, his lineage. $70 million guaranteed. So right there, that's a win for him. Gets $26.5 million on average over the next 4 years after this extension kicks in, up to $30 million with some incentives there. But Henry, that's a ton of money, obviously. That's not much in the edge market right now. This is a massive win for the Broncos because, Henry, Nik Bonitto is now the 10th highest paid edge rusher in the NFL. This is a guy that was in the conversation to be the defensive player of the year last year. A lot of times when a player is in the conversation to be the defensive player of the year, they reset the market at their position. Now, you and I knew that he wasn't going to reset the edge market because of where Micah Parsons was at $47 million per year. But we also had talked over the past couple of weeks about how Nik Bonitto, he could have gone on the open market after this year, depending on what he did this year, and got $40 million, got $35 million, got a base of $30 million with then incentives built on at the minimum. And instead, he signs this very team-friendly deal. Henry, he was third most in sacks last year. That is what edge rushers are graded on. And the Broncos land him as the 10th highest paid edge rusher in the NFL. And one more big win for Nik. He is now the highest paid non-quarterback in Broncos history. He is the highest paid defensive player in Broncos history. He tops the deal that Zach Allen just signed. He tops the deal of what Pat Surtain signed 1 year ago at $26.5 million.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of money. And the weird thing about it is that I don't buy that a $26.5 million edge rusher exists. Like, that's just not a thing that happens in the NFL. You're either a guy who's worth $15, $18 million, or you're a guy who's worth 35 or 40. That middle tier, it's not really a thing to me. You look around, like Brian Burns is sitting at 28 million a year. I believe he got signed. So it was actually a year removed from the 12.5 sack season. Rashawn Gary's there around 24.5. Montez Sweat signed like halfway through his 12.5 sack season to a $24 million deal. But I don't buy that there are guys in the league who, you know, just year in and year out are worth that number. You're kind of either a rotational piece, or somebody maybe with some upside, somebody who can give you 10 sacks, 9 sacks a year. And for that range, you're probably looking about 20 or just under 20. Or you're a guy who goes and gets 13 sacks, 14 sacks every year. And in that case, you're somebody who's worth, 30 plus minimum. And Nik Bonitto is one of those two things. And we all think that he's going to be the Nik Bonitto we saw last year, very productive. Somebody you can trust to be among the league's top sackers any given year. And if he does that, then this is a discount. Then you're saving 10 million bucks a year on somebody because you got this deal done. And on the off chance that he turns out to be more the 10 sack guy a year, for whatever reason, maybe, last year the Broncos, I think, had 9 more sacks than any other team in the NFL. If that comes back down a little bit and you finish second or third, maybe a couple of those sacks are Bonitto's sacks that you lose. In that world, then you're saying, hey, maybe this is an overpay, but in terms of an overpay, it'd be 7 million bucks of an overpay, and that's something that you can manage. Again, you really hope that you're getting another 13 and a half this year, 13 and a half next year, 13 and a half the year after that, and you're looking at this saying, incredible value. But by keeping it at this number, you're able to you're buying insurance. You're saying, at the end of the day, we might wind up slightly overpaying. But first of all, we're betting on Nik to not be that guy and to be the guy we saw last year. And because we're betting on him to be that guy, if the bet hits, then we're actually saving potentially $15 million versus what he could cost after the season.
I just don't think there's that much risk involved here. I mean, it's almost half the money of Micah Parsons at the top of the market, and this is a deal that, and it's already, in my opinion, a great value. What's this going to look like in 2 or 3 years? Nik might be saying, "Man, I missed out on so much money then," and that's what you get when you give players extensions early and you don't let them hit the open market and you give them that guaranteed money. That's what you get there. And Henry, I also just don't think that this is something that the Broncos should be nervous about, and clearly aren't nervous about. And I don't think fans should be nervous about because this is a deal that Nik Bonitto isn't really a one-hit wonder when it comes to a $26.5 million per year deal with the edge market. He had 8 sacks his second year. His first year was tough. There's no doubt about it. And the Broncos knew that coming in. Nik Bonitto was a very raw edge rusher. He had the talent. That's why the Broncos were able to get him at 64. You don't get a pass rusher with the talent of Nik Bonitto's ability at 64 if he's not very raw. And so that's what the Broncos had with him as a rookie. So underwhelming rookie year might be the way to put it. His second year, though, 8 sacks, and I feel like that goes under the radar, including me. That flies under the radar. That's a really good second year for any pass rusher in the NFL. And then he takes that massive jump one more time last year at 13.5. So he's taken massive jumps from year 1 to year 2, year 2 to year 3. Now we're entering year 4. Does he take another massive jump? If he does, then the Broncos just got the steal of a lifetime. If he doesn't and he stays around where he is, there's nothing to indicate that he's going to fall below what he was his second year in the NFL. And if he's right around 10 sacks, then the $26.5 million is a steal right there. So the Broncos aren't paying Nik to continue to progress with this deal. They're paying him for what he is. And what he is a 25-year-old that has only shown that he is going to get better as he continues to progress in the NFL. So I just think that this is a deal that, man, we will be talking about this as a Pat Surtain deal. Like, man, the Broncos fleeced Pat. The Broncos fleeced Nik Bonitto just because they got such good deals here. I think there is very, very little risk and very little reason for anyone to be concerned about this deal.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I brought up some of those other guys who've gotten similar deals is because they were in similar situations. You look at Montez Sweat, 7 sacks, 9 sacks, 5 sacks, 8 sacks, and then year 5, he gets to 12.5. That's when he gets the big deal. Then last year, he has 5.5 sacks. Plays every game, starts every game. You look at Brian Burns, 7.5, 9, 9, 12.5, and then 8, 8.5. And so you get it's just that when you have a year where you're top 3 in sacks, there's a good chance that there is something a little bit outlierish. And I really hope it isn't. I think Nik Bonitto is very capable of going out there making plays. But as Sean Payton said when he was talking about all the extensions they have to do this offseason. Knowing that Court and Zach Allen were a little bit easier to settle on a number for, just because with Court, he might not put up the exact same numbers every single year, but they're pretty similar year in, year out. You kind of know what you're going to get. The phrase was, it's a transition period for Nik. And there's no reason to look at Nik and say he can't do what he did last year. It's just that sacks can be somewhat of a fluky stat in the first place. There's randomness involved in that. But yeah, I mean, even if you wind up getting 10 sacks a year, then you're right in that Brian Burns. I think he was at 26 million. So getting Nik Bonitto at 26.5 million, that's about what you expect. Montez Sweat going for 24.5 million. You're a tick in front of what he did last year with 5.5 sacks. So I agree. Like, I think the odds are very slim that you look back and say, this isn't a great deal. And the world in which that happens is, he has 8 sacks, and it's not even necessarily the 8 sacks. It's the fact that if you have a starting edge rusher who has 8 sacks, then you're looking for more from that position. You want to get better there. And because, again, on the off chance that things don't go well for Nik Bonitto, you still have Jonah Ellis in house. You still have Q Robinson in house. Dondre Tillman's right there. And so this isn't going to stop you from improving at that spot, because you already have everybody now in this edge room locked up for 3 years. It's like Bad Moon brings up, what about pressure rate? Is that fluky? That is not fluky. That's a stat that isn't fluky. That's one that you can trust, and it's another one where Nik Bonitto does really well. But yeah, I mean, I love the deal. I think 1 year from now, we're going to look back and say, like you said, it's similar to the Pat deal. You got him locked up early, and because of that, you're saving some money. And if he goes out there, yeah, if he takes a step forward this year, then we're talking about him being potentially Defensive Player of the Year. It's just, can you be this exact same guy you were last year in and year out? And there's a part of that can be really hard in the NFL. And I love what Joel said. Yes, his coverage is the most underrated part of his game. He's like a safety out there in the flats, and that adds a bunch of value to the people who don't like the run defense. That's something you don't see from that position very often. Who knows if he gets the opportunity to have a pick 6 like he did against the Colts, but the way that he is able to kind of manipulate the flats and make those throws over his head a little bit tougher just because he's so fast, that's huge for a defense. And when you play that 3-4 defense, you're going to see Nik Bonitto in coverage, 10 times every game. That's another spot where he's really good. It's just those handful of rushing snaps where you might not love it, but he isn't below average as a run defender. It's just not the area where he thrives, like sacking the quarterback or coverage.
There's another element to this. I mean, Nik Bonitto is a playmaker. You talked about, you pointed to those touchdowns he had last year. He's a massive playmaker. That's what takes a defense from being great to elite. That's what takes a defense from being elite to historic. That's what takes a defense to become the level of the 2015 Super Bowl defense that carried a team to a Super Bowl win. You need guys like that. That's what Nik Bonitto brings. And Nik Bonitto, we got to talk about just what this Broncos group has been able to do over the past 14 months. The Walton Penner Group has dished out nearly $500 million in contracts to guys on the team. And Henry, that speaks volumes to every part of the organization. It speaks volumes to the ownership group, to having the money, to be willing to commit the money to this. They have put $500 million in escrow for these contracts over the past 14 months. So ownership, right on track. It's exactly everything you want and more from an ownership group. George Paton, another massive win for him. He is on the hot streak of all hot streaks. He should be in the conversation and probably the front runner for Executive of the Year, what he's done over these past couple of years and what he continues to do. Again, he drafted Nik Bonitto at 64. Nik Bonitto had all the talent in the world, but a lot of teams did not want to draft him because he was very raw. George Paton not only took him, but was blown away with him with that quote that he had after the draft. And then it speaks to also what the Broncos coaching has been able to do to develop Nik Bonitto over these past couple of years. And let's talk about this. Quinn Miners, Pat Surtain, Jonathan Cooper, DJ Jones, Garrett Bowles, Courtland Sutton, Zach Allen, and Nik Bonitto. You signed all of those guys in the past 14 months. All but one of those guys is a player that you drafted. So you did a good job identifying one guy in free agency, DJ Jones, and then you've done a massive job, an incredible job of drafting and developing. That's how championship teams are not only formed, but that's how you get consistent winning year in and year out, is drafting and developing. And also credit to Sean Payton for helping these guys take them over the top. And we just see even more guys that could deserve extensions and that will get extensions. And we'll start to look at those in the coming days. But I mean, there's a couple out there still right now in terms of the draft and develop. Luke Wattenberg is a guy that can now get an extension this year going into next year. And then, of course, we got Bo Nix and a lot of other younger guys. Riley Moss is on the docket there. So this is just, it speaks to more than just Nik Bonitto itself. It speaks to just how the organization is clicking in all aspects. And this is just so incredibly encouraging for the Broncos now, this year, and the long term moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, the plan this offseason was to just run it back. Like, you're able to go out there and bring back basically your entire team, except for, the only two starters you lose are Cody Barton and Javonte Williams. You probably upgraded those two spots. So the idea is you get to bring everybody back, and you get to add some hopefully Pro Bowlers on top of that, including, a full draft class, so that you're kind of building from the back end as well. So that's where the hype for the season comes from, is that it's the same thing except with more talent. That's what makes it so easy to get excited. By getting this deal done, you're essentially saying we're doing the same thing moving forward. There's a lot of weird stuff that's happened to the Broncos and their salary cap over the past few years. Obviously, the biggest is the Russell Wilson move, which forced you to clear out Jerry Jeudy. It forced you to clear out Justin Simmons. There were more of those guys as well. But because of that, you kind of leaned out your roster because you had to, not in a fun way. But as the $50 million cap hit from last year clears, and then the $30 million cap hit for Russ this year clears, all of a sudden you get all of that space back. And when you draft well and have guys inside your building that you want to give that money to, that's the healthiest way to grow. And I think that might have been the toughest part to nail from the whole Russell Wilson recovery is, yes, you have money to spend, or will have money to spend, this year, next year, to kind of refill that salary cap. But spending money in free agency is typically a bad idea because the returns are not nearly as good as if you're signing somebody inside your own building. The scheme change, for some reason, somebody let that guy walk and become a free agent. To be able to use that money on in-house players where it's used more efficiently is kind of the kicker on top of this. And it takes good drafting to be able to come up with guys to give that money to. But it's why they're set up so well for the future, because you can look at all these guys and say, hey, this guy's going to be here. This guy's going to be here. This guy's going to be here. And anything we can add on top is just gravy, or whatever you want to call it. Bonitto is now part of that list. He's here through the 2029 season. He's going to be 30 when he hits free agency. That is kind of crazy to think about as somebody who, we know Nik and love Nik, but seeing rookie Nik Bonitto versus, 30-year-old Nik Bonitto is going to be kind of crazy. It's awesome to see, but, you don't get to this position without drafting really, really well. And it's why a lot of these bets are more likely to pay off than ones that you would make in free agency.
And then another thing with Nik is this just is another contract that's done the right way by George Paton, by Sean Payton, by the Walton Pennership ownership group. No drama, zero drama. And Nik could have been in a similar position as Micah Parsons. He could have said, no, I'm not stepping on to that practice field. I'm not stepping on to a preseason game field until I get paid. And in fact, Nik got that bone spur from playing in a preseason game, and he decided to still practice through it. He could have held out easily, and there could have been nasty stuff said from both sides, and that did not happen. And it has not happened in any way, shape, or form. It just speaks to the Broncos organization. It speaks to the players. It's a credit to all involved. And Nik Bonitto gets this deal done just in the nick of time, 3 days before the season starts. They're able to get this deal done. Of course, the Broncos got this deal done with Pat Surtain a year ago from yesterday on the Wednesday leading up to the game. They get this deal done with the same agent, Tory Dandy of Athletes First, with Nik Bonitto the Thursday before the first game of the season. So everything, the vibes in Broncos country should be nothing but elite right now. Everyone should be feeling great going into this game. And Henry, let's check in with Nik and see how things are going as he's driving into work today, fresh off signing this deal. Oh, he's screaming. You can't hear it, but man, he is hype right here. Look at that. That's how you should feel after getting $70 million guaranteed right there. That's going to do it. Or do we have any super chats that we need to hit really quick? You hear? Let me know if we do. Henry, any final thoughts as we pull up any comments that we need to get to?
No, really. I mean, we hit it all. It should be a really, really good deal. Nik Bonitto is one of your most exciting players, one of your most explosive players. He fits what the Broncos want to do really well. Yes, it does help having John Franklin-Myers, Zach Allen on the inside, but you need somebody who takes advantage of that. You need somebody who keeps a quarterback in the pocket to create opportunities for those guys. This entire front five is awesome, and to keep it together. Yeah, it makes it possible to have 9 more sacks than any other team in the NFL again this year, which is just a crazy thing to be capable of doing.
Yep, exactly. So we will be live again in just over 2 hours. Stay tuned at noon. We're going to have an absolutely packed show. We had a packed show today before this extension. Now this extension just adds that much more hype into it. We are having an awesome guest on, Jordan Palmer. Plus, we're diving into captains, diving into the status of Dre Greenlaw. Jeffrey Simmons takes a shot at Bo Nix. We're going to give our keys to beating the Titans. Plus, talking about this massive extension. We're going to have our guy RK on. So that's going to do it for us today. Make sure to tune in at noon where we've got another show. Let's frickin' Bonitto.
We all silly like the mayor.